me ask you a last question, Will. Now you are doing yourself this transition into a new function, and you leave behind a legacy of having transformed the world into I would say, into information society. Now, if you look forward and at your next career step, career may be not the right word here, but at your next life phase, what would you like to see as your legacy in 10, 15 years?
Of the new work?
Of the new work,
yeah.
Of your new function.
Well, I set very ambitious goals because I'm quite optimistic. If you look at, say, the 20 diseases that our global health program goes after, I'd hope that within 15 years, over half of those, we could have had a very dramatic impact. Some of them will prove to be harder than others. For example, AIDS, we will have made an improvement, but not the dramatic improvement probably in that time frame. Malaria, perhaps, and a number of the other ones, we have things in the pipeline. So, huge change in the mortality rates in developing countries, which then has this effect of reducing population growth. That's this big benefit that then makes everything like education and nutrition a lot easier. So I have very high expectations there. And we actually use these dashboards internally at the foundation to make everything be quite numeric. We're trying to be rigorous about that and even share those so that people can see, oh, you fell short of what you had in mind, and then we get to explain if we have any lessons that might be learnable from other foundations. So I think there's some things about how we go about things that I hope those learnings can have an impact. There's the specific work in the different divisions, health, development, and the U.S. education work. That in 15 years, boy, by then we will have spent a lot of money. $3 billion a year, 15 years, that's adds up. And for that, people should have a very high expectation of what we can do.
Thank you, Bill, for having brought to us this evening a very enlightened, very enlightened view of capitalism. I hope many will follow you. We will facilitate it in any case, because that's the mission of the World Economic Forum. And I'm looking forward to, if I may say so, to welcome you back in your new incarnation next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here we go again. This is another Looking Glass Forum episode here. And we may be doing, could be a Syllabus Journal entry today. And that was, of course, your cold open with the wonderful elite murder cartel. And, of course, that's your World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. And, of course, this goes back to 2008. We're talking about the next 15 years, all that they would do for vaccines and et cetera. And, of course, if you look, 2008, 15 years later, brings us right to 2023. So you can see that they were right on time with all the billions they spent to cause the health of the world and world health issues through the World Health Organization to be able to achieve their goal of eliminating the overpopulation. So it's right here with this quote-unquote new work, this new function, this new role of Bill Gates in 2008 to ultimately bring a mass change to mortality rates for people in poor countries through vaccines and to depopulate the planet. So there's your quote, there's your words, there's the massive kind of earth-shattering applause by a bunch of sycophants, and it's the Obama worshiping team, it's the Obama worshipers, they're over there, and the FBI is over there protecting Bill Gates, of course, and all of his work to depopulate the planet and the poor people, and to get us in our education and get us in our nutrition and do whatever it takes to basically bring down the population of the world. And their work has never been so successful, right? And they're already talking about, as they get old and get ready to go in the box, that's where they're going. They're pretending like they're not going to join everyone else in death. They just sent that. They just sent a bunch of people to there were some people with morbid conditions, morbid obesity, different kind of morbidity issues that allowed the COVID vaccines and the COVID disease to run rampant and destroy many people's lives. And there was a lot of healthy people too, a lot of really healthy people who are forced into getting these vaccination shots for their own good, trusting the credentialed class, right? This is the mass betrayal of the world by the clerks, by the credentialed class, those with the IDs, the PhDs, and the doctorates that make them MDs and medical doctors, and we all trust them, the Faucis of the world. We trust that they're trying to take care of us, but we have to not fail to understand, but to fully cognize that the World Health Organization is not there to take care of, it's not the World Population Health Organization, it's the World Health Organization, and it exists to take care of the health of the world. And of course, when he was talking about at least half of the diseases out there, when Bill Gates was talking to Herr Schwab, all right, he was talking to Herr Schwab about destroying taking care of half of the diseases out there. I think what they're talking about, and it becomes more clear now after the fact, is half of the people on the earth who are these diseases, right? They're not talking about, people are suffering from malaria, let's save them. They're saying, let's use malaria and as a disease, and the supposed so-called presumed medicine that we're going to introduce, the medical solution that we'll introduce to these people will also destroy them, just like the malaria does, right? So it's about depopulating and destroying lives and destroying people's futures so that they can have what they imagine to be a pristine planet. And of course, this is just all part and parcel of saving the environment. And that's what we're supposed to believe. But it's really just a return to the neo-feudalism and the serfdom of old, where the lords and the princes and the dukes and the nobility class get to run us all down with their horses and their warfare machinery and their scientific advancements, so they can use those ahead of us to save themselves and their families, but ultimately destroy the rest of us. And it's time for us to kind of become aware and to wake up, and for the light bulb to blink on, bink. Right now it shoots illumination throughout the room of your brain, and you can now think freely. You can imagine the past. There was some kind of force out there, some kind of authority or power that would stop evil men like this from doing what they're doing to the whole entire world. But you would be wrong. We're stuck here in the world with them, and we're just waiting for them to die off, waiting for them to just disappear into the box where they've sent so many other people, and to find out what their judgment will be. And of course, they're betting the great wager that they're not going to face any consequences for their sin of murdering and destroying so many people. But I wager the opposite. I wager that they are overcompensating for the terrible fate that awaits them, and that for them, the weeks are going by like seconds as their life counts down to the very end. Imagine George Soros. Of course, he's handing all of his money and all of his ill will and despicable behavior and perverse activities by which he constantly seeks to overthrow nations around the world and destabilize currencies and get people. What was he doing there in Ukraine before the war? Everyone is these sort of apex predators of the financial world are there to destroy mankind and to fulfill and further the aims of these overlords who wish to just turn us all into a technotronic slave class of workers. They don't need millions and millions and billions of people anymore, right? And of course, that's the advantage that we have before they can try to depopulate us and kill us off and have us, carefully led down the primrose path into the gas chambers, if you want, whatever the plans are there, whatever the mechanisms for getting us into FEMA camps, and getting everyone so impoverished and destabilized throughout the region of America, so that the grid goes down and the Wi-Fi is not working and you can no longer get fuel and there's no food. I mean, it's going to get you put into a FEMA camp pretty quick, unless you have the ability to survive out on your private property, where you have enough room to grow food. And of course, that'll just put you on the target, like the kulaks were in Ukraine. The kulaks were the individuals that were killed. I think I once said 50 million, but maybe it was only like 10 million. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, when the difference between 10 million people and 50 million people, there's just piles of bodies up like a mountain, and it could be easy to when you see the mountain, the ocean of bodies, you could be forgiven for how many millions you overcounted. But we're being slowly turned into Ukraine in the 1930s and 40s here, where we're being decimated. And I think the people that actually have the ability to have property and have farm animals and grain will soon be the ones that are most targeted. You can see they're coming after them already. Farmers, people that have livestock, who feed the world and who can feed themselves, of course, they're going to say that these livestock are causing emission problems and they're causing greenhouse gases and they're destroying the environment and destroying the planet. I mean, it's just all this absurdity. And the more that we go along with it, the more that we go on with it, and they see how twisted we are and how easily and how, we're undermined in our own thinking, and how easily we're, enslaved in our minds, and how easily we're twisted to just believe whatever kind of insanity. That's why this transgender, bizarre concept of gender morphology, right? So we're all supposed to become lured into this degenerating mental illness of gender dysphoria, and instead of just coping with those mental illnesses, we're all supposed to, it's supposed to be a crime if you don't use the right gender pronoun. It's quite depraved, and it's quite sickening how people are going along with this. These are the same people that are wearing the masks, the same people that know more people that died from the vaccine or were injured from the vaccine than they know that were sick from COVID, right? You have a common cold come through, and then everyone takes an extermination vaccine, just line up and take it because you got a cold. Come on, man. Guys are not intelligent enough to live. I mean, they really just culled the most stupid and gullible morons among us, right? Not to make fun of those people, but I mean, I knew right from the get-go that was no good. I mean, you can leave that stuff, it's being shipped in trucks and it's supposed to be kept cold the whole time. What happens if one gets set in the sun for a day and then nobody knows? And then, so many people are just being wiped out for being morons here. Because they really believed Fauci, and they really believed Bill Gates, and they really believe the World Economic Forum is trying to help us, And so these are the people that are really sinking the rest of us down. I mean, the rest of us are resisting and fighting back and courageously, desperately trying to save our children and our country. And the rest of you are just taking the Kool-Aid, just going along with it. And you're encouraging the rest of us too. So that's why you're so sickening. And the rest of us wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire, because why we're so angry, right? Because you're going along with this like a bunch of idiots. You're sickening morons with no ability to think for yourself, no ability to critically think. You're endangering your own family and yourself, and then you want to encourage the rest of us to do too. And you actually want to pull the carpet out from underneath us as we try to resist and save ourselves. So get behind me, Satan. That's all I have to say to all of you guys who are willingly going along with this. And they're talking about the next pandemic. And I bet you sycophants and Obama worshippers, you degenerate and slavish morons out there can't wait to wear a mask again. You can just pre-order your masks now. It's so exciting. Oh, let's get our masks ready for the next event. The next event 201, 202, right? The next 100-year epidemic is about to happen in 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks there's one, and there's a new vaccine for everything. And so these people are out there publicly saying it, and you cunts are over there going along with it and taking whatever vaccine they pop out. Oh, take another booster, and you're just running along with it. Hey, man, I can understand we all got to make a living, but and we all got to offer people products they may want to buy. But it doesn't mean you need to take all those products yourself. It doesn't mean you need to cause your family to take them just because you're selling them to people. Right? I mean, come on, bro. All you got to do is have your balls drop, grow some gonads, and learn how to say, no, I'm going to put my family first. And there's a big question mark over the efficacy and the ethics surrounding all these issues. There's a lot of questions. And this is all new and a lot of questionable. World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, Microbe soft, right? What's Microbe soft doing, involved with vaccines? And then you don't want to question any of that. You want to pop your kids with it. Man, what do you want us all to do? I mean, to feel sorry? It's more pathetic than that. It's dangerously, it's scary, dude. And then we're in this contest, this massive cultural contest to see who's right. And you're going to put your kids' lives on the line for that because they might get a cold, in order to save them all from the cold and to save them all from the psychological pressure from the society around me. My peer group and my peers are peer pressuring me to do it, and I can't get on the plane, and I better take it. What is going on, man? You have no gonads, no balls, no ability to care for your family. Guys are just sickening. It's sickening. It's distressful. Not for me, my family. We're safe. We're never going to take. We're not going to take any experimental vaccines that are approved after the fact by the FDA 3 years later. No. We're good. And of course, I blame Trump too. Of course, I blame Trump too, because he was the one who was he really thought it was great to promote this idea of just experimental drugs you can take yourself. They don't allow them, and they're not approved drugs, but it could save a life. So we introduced legislation that anybody can just take any kind of experimental medication anytime they want. They did that. They passed that crazy legislation right before this whole thing with the vaccine. Just allowing it, inducing it, permitting it to take place, permitting the vaccine and all of the consequences of it to really, unfold on all of us here. And maybe some of you guys kind of like threaded the needle. But from what I have been reading, the consequences and the myocarditis and all the difficulties that are going to follow the vaccine those side effects could occur up to 8 years after the last time you took any kind of injection. So you might feel good now. You may feel like you dodged a bullet and the shortness of breath and all that. It's not going to happen to you, right? Because the vaccine is not in your bloodstream, is not putting pressure on your heart and your blood circulation yet. But within 8 years, it could. So, and your kids too. I mean, kids, their ability to reproduce, from what I'm looking at, not everybody in the world is insane. So once you show me 25 doctors and Tucker Carlson and RFK Jr., guys, we're well past this idea of a conspiracy. You can no longer put your head inside a paper bag and just pretend like this is what you have always imagined this to be, a safe and effective vaccine. No, it's not. It's safely depopulating, and it's effectively destroying the American people, which is my main concern here. Of course, I think America did a good job. There was a large contingent of people who decided not to get involved with that or take it. Very wise, very suspicious, very, incredulous of us to not just go ahead and go along with it. So I would give us high marks there, but we have a lot. Now the wagons have been circled around us. Now they have a listing of all the people on a list, like you and I, who wouldn't take it, who just are too healthy, have no reason to risk our health with some experimental, drug or what? That's not a drug, right? I mean, come on, man. What is that? The Pentagon juice nanobots or whatever, man. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. You can't make a law to make me. You can't do nothing. You can't do nothing with these Americans because we will not do it. We're just not going to comply. It's nothing to even say. Doesn't matter how you humiliate us. Doesn't matter how you drag us into jail for the January 6th stuff. Those guys are going to get out. You can't kill them, right? You can't kill the January 6th guys, right? You can't just murder them. You can't put them on a guillotine. You can't hang them. They're going to get out soon. They're going to get out in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. They're going to get out. They're going to get out. I can't wait till they get out. They're my boys, right? We need them. We need them to come on out and come out of jail and looking real shitty. Wouldn't let them take care of themselves. Wouldn't let them shower. Wouldn't let them cut their fingernails. It gets hard. It gets hard to wipe your butt when your fingernails are 3 inches long, guys. Never been in jail before? Yeah. So you guys are all too weak. You're too weak to fight for your country. You're too soft. You're like cotton candy. And we're like razor blades, okay? So when you put a bunch of razor blades in the bag with cotton candy, what do you think happens, guys? Just shake it around. We'll see. We're going to get shook up. We're all going to find out what happens here. Because, it's nothing for us to give our lives for this cause. So happily do it. I was never fit enough to go into the Marine Corps or to go into the Air Force or to fight for my country. But I put my hand over my heart. And when it comes down to fighting for my country here, domestically, in this land, against tyranny and against the encroachments of foreign adversaries and invasion, yeah, we're going to fight that. We're ready. All the people who didn't go into Biden's pervert military to get lectured about white rage and all this kind of stuff. Don't you need some white rage on the battlefield when you're trying to defeat the enemy? When 90% of your military is so-called quote-unquote white people who have a little bit of less melanin in their skin, a little bit of lighter pigment. And when you have those lighter pigment people in your military and they're defending your country, you probably need a little bit of rage on the battlefield. You see what I'm saying? So on every level, they're asinine morons, right? Now, let's just face it. They're sitting up there. People are taking pictures. They're behind the podium. They have they're acting like they're some kind of kingpins and they're just lords of the world. And they're so with their arrogancy and their chins out. Look at the one woman who goes out every day and speaks to. She's getting annihilated. Why doesn't she just quit already? Whatever her name is, Jean Pierre Moron. Why doesn't she just quit? She looks like an idiot. She gives a really bad name to her own cause and her own ancestry is just disrespected by her as she goes up there and does like an Oprah routine to us, right? And lies to us constantly. And it's the same thing with all of them. When you go up there, you have the defense. What a reject. What a moron. Defense Secretary Austin. You're a pathetic goddamn son of a bitch. And everybody in the military should not salute you. You're a fucking worm. And so this worm is up there destroying our military for the Chinese, right, to make it easier for them, because they can't possibly defeat us unless we have these pigs inside the gates who are unlocking and unsecuring and destroying our defenses, inside the wall, inside the wire. And without them, China would never have a chance. So that was money well spent by China to undermine and destroy us here at home. So we're not going to put up with it. We're not going to put up with this World Economic Forum. We're not going to put up with Microbe soft trying to destroy our families with their goddamn poison. And we're not going to put up with any of this shit anymore, are we? To sit here and not have to read stuff, and reading stuff is not my favorite thing to do. It's not like I love it to sit and to peruse the Politico article is cool, but to have to read it in some kind of salient way here on a podcast with people listening, it's whatever, man. So we have to get to the special report: how Bill Gates and partners use their clout to control the world, the global COVID response with little oversight. 4 health organizations working closely together spent almost $10 billion on responding to COVID across the world, but they lacked the scrutiny of governments and fell short of their goals, a Politico and Welt investigation found. By Eric Banco, 09/14/2022. Ashley Furlong, Lennart Fowler. When COVID-19 struck, the governments of the world weren't prepared. From America to Europe to Asia, they veered from minimizing the threat to closing their borders in ill-fated attempts to quell a viral spread that soon enveloped the world. While the most powerful nations looked inward, 4 non-governmental global health organizations began making plans for a life or death struggle against a virus that would know no boundaries. What followed was a steady, almost inexorable shift in power from the overwhelmed governments of the world to a group of non-governmental organizations, according to a 7-month investigation by Politico. Journalists based in the U.S. and Europe and Germany with the newspaper Welt, W-E-L-T. Armed with expertise, bolstered by contacts at the highest levels by Western nations, and empowered by well-grooved relationships with drug makers, the 4 organizations took on roles often played by governments, but without the accountability of governments whatsoever. While nations were still debating the seriousness of the pandemic, the groups identified potential vaccine makers and targeted investments in the development of tests, treatments, and shots, and they used their clout with the World Health Organization to help create an ambitious worldwide distribution plan for the dissemination of those COVID tools to needy nations. Wow, that's just very helpful. Very helpful, Bill Gates. Thank you very much for that, right? Health of the world, as we carry on here. The dissemination of those COVID tools to needy nations, though it would ultimately fail to live up to its original promises. The 4 organizations had worked together in the past, and 3 of them shared a common history. The largest and most powerful was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the largest philanthropies in the world. Then there was Gavi, the global vaccine organization that Gates helped to found to inoculate people in low-income nations to depopulate, remember? Because that's why we want to get this New World Order medicine. It's in order to depopulate. So Gavi, the global vaccine organization that Gates helped to found to inoculate people in low-level nations, and the Wellcome Trust, a British research foundation with a multi-billion-dollar endowment that had worked with Bill Gates Foundation in previous years. Finally, there was the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, the the International Vaccine Research and Development Group that Gates and Wellcome both helped to create in 2017. So it's just a big circular jerk, right? It's a big British circular jerk. It's the British and Washington D.C. establishment, London and Washington D.C., right? With Rome not far behind. So they show some interesting pictures here of CEO of Gavi, Seth Berkley, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Key takeaways. Number one, 4 organizations have spent almost $10 billion on COVID since 2020, the same amount as the leading U.S. agency tasked with fighting COVID abroad. The organizations collectively gave $1.4 billion to the World Health Organization, where they helped create a critical initiative to distribute COVID-19 tools or depopulation death shots. All right, that's just my little executive editing here, but let me just go on here. That program failed to achieve its original benchmarks. The organization's leaders had unprecedented access to the highest levels of governments, spending at least $8.3 million to lobby lawmakers and officials in the U.S. and Europe. Officials from the U.S. and EU, representatives from the World Health Organization, rotated through these 4 organizations as employees, helping them solidify their political and financial connections in Washington, D.C. and Brussels. The leaders of the 4 organizations pledged to bridge the equity gap. However, during the worst waves of the pandemic, low-income countries were left without life-saving vaccines. Right, of course, life-saving vaccines is the prevailing shibboleth, right? So we can't say dangerous and damage-causing vaccines because that's really what they are. So some of these low-income countries who are left without these vaccines are probably better off, and that would be my just opinion piece on the matter. So number 6 and last, leaders of the 3 of the 4 organizations who are just filtering around the same politicians and administrators in and out in order to consolidate their control, right? And so these leaders of the 3 of the 4 organizations maintained that lifting intellectual property protections was not needed to increase vaccine supplies, which activists believe would have helped save lives. So that's the follow the money methodology, right? So let's carry on. Civil society organizations active in poor nations, including Doctors Without Borders, expressed discomfort with the notion that Western-dominated groups staffed by elite teams of experts would be helping guide life and death decisions affecting people in poor nations. Those tensions only increased when the Gates Foundation opposed efforts to waive intellectual property rights, a move that critics saw as protecting the interests of pharmaceutical giants over people living in poor nations. Of course. Quote, what makes Bill Gates qualified to be giving advice and advising the U.S. government on where they should be putting the tremendous resources? Unquote, asked Kate Elder, Senior Vaccines Policy Advisor for Doctors Without Borders Access Campaign. Soon, however, governments in the United States and Europe were offering their own crucial support to the 4 groups. The organizations spent at least $8.3 million lobbying the U.S. and the EU, according to an analysis of lobbying disclosures. When this past spring, the leaders of CEPI sought to replenish the group's coffers, it spent $50,000 in part to advocate for a $200 million in yearly funding from the U.S. government, according to filings and interviews with the Capitol Hill staff. The overtures worked while President Joe Biden's efforts to obtain an additional $5 billion in funding for the administration's international work combating the virus were floundered in Congress. He still managed to slip $500 million to CEPI into his budget proposal. $100 million a year for 5 years. That's very generous of us, right? Wow. The money, which was yet to be approved, would help what most global health experts agree is an important cause, not only in humanitarian terms, but in helping prevent poor nations from becoming breeding grounds for new variants. Right, this is a couple years back when we were all practicing virologists, right? We were all counting variant we were on. So we carry on. And most believe that the Gates Foundation and other groups deserve credit not only for their work to help save lives, but for being almost the only game in town with sufficient scope to fight a pandemic, right? Is that what was happening there? They were fighting a pandemic for us? But the group's extensive politicking and financial might in the U.S. and Europe helped to enable them to direct the international response to the most important health event of the past century at a time when governments were caught flat-footed, according to the investigation. So that investigation which relied on more than 4 dozen interviews with U.S. and European officials and global health specialists, charted the step-by-step journey through which much of the international response to the COVID pandemic passed from governments to a privately overseen global constituency of non-governmental experts. It also detailed the significant financial and political connections that enabled them to achieve such clout at the highest levels of the U.S. government, the European Commission, and the World Health Organization. So if you detail significant financial and political connections, they used to call that a conspiracy back in the day, right? The officials who spoke to Politico and Welt hail from the top tiers of the governments of the U.S. and in Europe, according to the health agencies. They have granted anonymity to speak candidly about how their respective administrations approached the international response to COVID and what missteps occurred during the course of their tenure. Many of them dealt directly with the representatives of the 4 global health agencies, they call them, some on a daily basis. I think they should be called global DePopulation agencies. Politico and Well examined meeting minutes as well as thousands of pages of financial disclosure and tax documents, which revealed that the groups have spent nearly $10 billion since 2020. Since 2020, the same amount as the leading U.S. agency charged with fighting COVID abroad. It is one of the first comprehensive accountings of expenditures by global health organizations on the global fight against the pandemic. Now, critics are raising significant questions about the equity and effectiveness of the group's response to the pandemic and the serious limitations of the outsourcing the pandemic response to unelected, privately funded groups. Quote, "I think we should be deeply concerned," unquote, said Lawrence Gostin, a Georgetown University professor who specializes in public health law. Okay. Quote, "Putting it in a very crass way, money buys influence, and it is the worst kind of influence, not just because it's money, although that's important because money shouldn't dictate policy, but also because it's preferential access behind closed doors," unquote. Gostin said that such power, even if propelled by good intentions and expertise, is, quote, "anti-democratic because it's extraordinarily non-transparent and opaque," unquote, and, quote, "leaves behind ordinary people, communities, and civil societies, and apparently poor nations as well." While dozens of global health organizations participated in the world's response to COVID, the Politico and Well investigation focused on these 4 organizations because of their connections to one another. Both Gavi and CEPI received seed funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and because they together played a critical role in advising governments and the World Health Organization, and of course the CCP was in there somewhere too. Politico and their experts over here forgot to mention that, but I'll just point it out. The World Health Organization, the WHO, was crucial to the group's rise to power and had long-standing ties to the global health body. The groups of both CEPI and Gavi have a specially designated World Health Organization representative. There is also a revolving door between employment in the groups and work for the WHO. Former WHO employees now work at the Gates Foundation and CEPI, and former CEPI workers now work at the WHO, and the Gavi, who now work at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who now work at WHO, such as Chris Wolf, the Deputy Director of Country Partnerships at the Gates Foundation, occupy important positions, such as the group's clout with the WHO stem simply from money. Since the start of the pandemic in 2020, the Gates Foundation, Gavi, and Wellcome Trust, the MI6 operation over there, have donated collectively more than $1.4 billion to the WHO, a significantly greater amount than most of the other official member states, including the United States and the European Commission, according to data by the WHO. Quote, "You have to remember that when you're dealing with the Gates Foundation, it's almost like you're dealing with another major country in terms of their donations to global health organizations," a former senior U.S. health official said. Working closely with the WHO, the 4 groups played a central role in creating an initiative known as Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator. That's cool, man. Really nifty. I bet Billy thought of that himself. Okay, back to the article. Or ACT-A. That focused on securing and delivering tests, treatments, and vaccine doses to low and middle income countries across the world. COVAX, a special consortium operated by Gavi, CEPI, and UNICEF, is the vaccine pillar of the ACT-A initiative. So I'm never going to take anything from any of those people ever. Right? Not even a Werther's original. Nothing. As we carry on here. But ACT-A, or ACT-A, got to make it nerded out, right? Got to nerd it up like Bill would approve of. Missed its delivery goal of 2021 on all 3 fronts for testing, vaccine distribution, and treatments, according to an independent review by Dahlberg Global Development Advisors, a policy advisor firm based in New York. Wow, sounds legit. The ACT-A diagnostics team set a target of making 50 million tests accessible to low and middle income countries by the middle of 2021. It procured just 84 million tests by June 2021, only 16% of its target. According to the report, the therapeutics team originally set a goal of delivering 245 million treatments to low and middle income countries by 2021, but later changed the target to 100 million new treatments by the end of 2021. As of June of that year, the therapeutics team had allocated only 1.8 million treatments. COVAX set the aim of delivering 2 billion vaccine doses by the end of 2021. By September of that year, it had only delivered 319 million doses. Although COVAX significantly accelerated the delivery of doses later in 2021 and in 2022, governments had struggled to get shots into arms. As of August 2022, only about 20% of Africans were vaccinated, a dangerously low percentage, right? They were running for the hills. They were running away from that crap. And these are the numbers according to the African CDC. Okay, great. The leaders of the group say that they were unable to meet the goals largely because wealthy Western governments were slow to step up and make available the huge tranches of vaccine and therapeutics that were needed to protect the world. The group say they provided a crucial voice for the suffering and needs of poor nations, without which the progress may have been slower, far slower. Quote, the Gates Foundation focused on supporting a global response that would ensure low and middle income countries had affordable, equitable access to the best data and tools available to tackle the crisis. Unquote, Mark Sussman, CEO of the Gates Foundation, said in a statement. In some areas, we saw successes. On the most critical issue of equitable vaccine access, the world as a whole failed as high-income countries initially monopolized available supply. Unquote, the foundation declined to make Gates available for comment. The Politico and Welp investigation found, however, that ACT-A's structure diminished accountability. ACT-A representatives set funding priorities and campaigned for donations, but the money, $23 billion in total, went directly to the entities involved in the initiative, such as Gavi and CEPI, although ACT-A's website keeps track of how much money was raised, it is nearly impossible to tell exactly where it all went. Amazing. It's like a magic trick. Based on each organization's individual COVID database, it is not possible to delineate exactly how the group spent the money raised through ACT-A. Okay, great. So this is the article. It's profound. It goes on. It's quite a read. I would read it more for you, but I'm tired. And you can read it for yourself. So we plugged you in. Take a minute and go read it. That's right. It's now time for a word from our awesome sponsor, Wendy's Boutique Limited. Wendy'sLimited.com. And Wendy'sLimited.com is offering the hottest new designer trends and brand name couture fashion styles. So you have to hear about Wendy's Boutique. Wendy'sLimited.com. Wendy'sLimited.com now has designer women's apparel and fine jewelry, sexy boutique fashions, very best prices online. And you know that at Wendy'sLimited.com, they know what a woman is, what a woman really is, right? So if you're a beautiful woman, or if you know a beautiful woman, and if you don't, stop listening to this show, okay? Right now, just stop. But if you happen to know a beautiful woman, and you are a beautiful woman, you have to know about Wendy'sLimited.com. So these are the sexiest boutique fashions anywhere, very best prices online, beautiful luxury products, guaranteed authentic, guaranteed, no Chinese knockoffs ever. So this is the real deal, this is the real, the legit, best prices, hottest couture gear, fragrances. We had Tom Ford shades, great deal on the Tom Ford shades. Everybody loves Tom Ford shades. So you can expect to find Gucci apparel, Hermes shoes, Prada jewelry, all at Wendy'sLimited.com. And you got to remember, Wendy'sLimited.com is really now famous for canceling Balenciaga when it mattered, right? So we're not having any of that over here. This is a woman-owned enterprise, all-American, family-run organization. Wendy'sLimited.com. Wendy'sLimited.com. You got to come join the craze. Hottest new designer trends, guys. Wendy's Boutique Limited. We need your support. And she's been courageous to support the show. Wendy'sLimited.com.
Some people would say this revolution is characterized by the fight of robots against human beings. And we will win this fight.
Professor Klaus Schwab was born in 1938 in Ravensburg, Germany, where Nazi crimes against humanity were committed. His father, Eugene Wilhelm Schwab, was the managing director of Escher Weiss Ravensburg, a company that used slave labor to manufacture weapons of war for the Third Reich. While Klaus's father was at the helm, the Nazi Party awarded Escher Weiss Ravensburg the title of National Socialist Model Company. Years later, Klaus Schwab joined the board of directors at Escher Weiss Ravensburg, where he played a key role in the development of South Africa's nuclear weapons program during the darkest years of the racist apartheid regime. Today, Klaus Schwab is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum.
If you'd like to meet the people who are supposed to repair the state of the world, or give a piece of your mind to the bankers who helped get us into this mess, we can tell you where to find a lot of them. The World Economic Forum.
Founded in 1971, the World Economic Forum is an international private organization which receives billions of tax-free dollars from its members and their global enterprises. Every year, the WEF brings together its members with world leaders, big pharma executives, tech titans, Hollywood celebrities, media personalities, and internet influencers to meet in the secluded mountains of Davos, Switzerland.
It is a tiny town folded into the Swiss Alps, a village where you could bump into Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, the head of Google, and the Queen of Jordan, all in one place. A lot of reporters cover the forum, but few get inside. It turns out there are two Davoses, one you see and one you don't. After hours, they're head of Google and the Queen of Jordan, all in one place. A lot of reporters cover the forum, but few get inside. It turns out there are two Davoses, one you see and one you don't. After hours, there are hundreds of private parties where deals are done. People who can't be seen together in public can meet here.
Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished heads of state and government, the future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
Klaus Schwab, the founder of the WEF, is particularly upfront and even proud of his ability to shape and influence world politics.
I created the community of global shapers as a means, as a force to shape our common future.
And of course, their Global Young Leaders program is a grooming ground so that when they ultimately infiltrate cabinets,
We penetrate the cabinets.
they will likely tend to govern a certain way.
Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
The names and the countries he mentioned ended up being some of the most dystopian and authoritative during this pandemic.
Names like Miss Merkel, Vladimir Putin, and so on.
Other names? Jacinda Ardern, Sebastian Kurz, Mauricio Macri, Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Ma, Gavin Newsom, Stéphane Bancel, Chelsea Clinton, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Leana Wen, Alexander and Jonathan Soros, George Soros' sons, and several of the Rothschilds. And of course,
Now who could represent such a world better than you, Prime Minister?
In 2014, Klaus Schwab called for the Great Reset,
We need a great reset.
which he positioned as the solution to the world's most urgent issues. The dark reality of Schwab's agenda is detailed in his best-selling book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. His endgame mission is to replace independent governance with a top-down controlled, one world government and a central bank-controlled digital currency.
So we're over here laboring away, as you can imagine. We have as many projects going as we can possibly manage here. We're hoping to eventually develop 20 or maybe 30 income streams. And we're just trucking along here in this collapsing era of the Biden calamity, the Biden pedo clan, right? What they do together, especially pedophilia, they do it together as a family, right? Remember? That was the all-important statement. I mean, of course, it's hard for us to detect. We're just the bourgeoisie, right? It's hard for us to detect just how perverse and how depraved and how despicable and disgusting the elites really are. It's beyond our ability to calculate. It's beyond our metric to ultimately be able to cope with the amount of lethal animosity and contempt that these people are stewed in. They're steeped in just total hatred, maniacal, bloodthirsty, predatory, the bottomless pit of their loathing. Ultimately, they are going to work to bring the whole human race into a systematic and all-consuming electronic prison, so that's what the technocracy is all about. And you can see Bill Gates and here the leader of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, really boasting and going to great lengths to just kind of put it in our face, So it goes back to 2008 and the cold open. It's pretty clear that they have no difficulty at all discussing how they are going to spend all these billions of dollars and plan all this out. And through the credentialed class, the betrayal and the tyranny of the clerks, if you want, the doctors, the Dr. Fauci's, like we said, of the world, who ultimately are consigned by the almighty dollar to do the kind of New World Order medicine that's best for them. So it goes all the way back to an interesting book there that we'll have to do a little report on at some point. Eustace Mullins and ultimately his book back in, going back decades and decades, Death by Vaccine, and we'll have to go ahead and look more into that. So people called it, people knew, they understood what they would do with their pernicious, cult of medicine. And people really are, sold out by this concept of hospitalization as an all-time, it goes back to just this concept that's burned into our mind. It makes me think of Bill Cosby, Dr. Huxtable, right? He was a really good doctor and a great dad, and he made the profession of the physician, the medical doctor profession, look really like profound and engaging and wonderful, just Dr. Huxtable, right? So when all that peels back and comes apart over time, you can see that it's a construction, and that maybe there was once a time when they made Whirlpool washers that would last a long time, and Cadillacs that would last for forever. and now they don't, And it's the same thing with medicine. Maybe a long time ago, medicine was really good, and you can trust the people in the white jackets not to be obsessed with politics or to use medicine to advance their political goals, But now those days are gone. So you have to go and look at your doctors. So we're entering this subtle Civil War Part 2, 2.0, right? And as we go forward, you have to check your doctor's political registration and make sure that they are not going to try to murder you with their practice, with their medical praxis, right? Their medical praxis ultimately kill you if you're not on the right team. And so these poor people that are put on the ventilators. Can you imagine? Did you ever get COVID? Everyone in the whole planet, raise their hand. Okay, I'm raising my hand. You raising your hand? Okay, everyone raise their hand. Everyone on the entire planet got COVID. And so the truth is that when you were trying to breathe and blow out all that mucus, it's like strangling your esophagus and your throat and your nasal passage with just a flood of, just depending on kind of like how you got hit, maybe where the infection occurred out in your body and your nose or whatever, like however it is your body had to react. Can you imagine being put on a ventilator and like strapped down and like have this thing like, killing you, like force blasting your lungs open and just like blowing you out, and that they were just murdering people with the ventilators, So I just feel so bad for people that went into the hospitals desperately trying to get some kind of fucking help, thinking that somehow they were going to get some kind of like life-saving situation, but they were put into a category of people that were maybe they were Trump voters, maybe they were from East Palestine or wherever, but they were helpless in the hands of these Los Lobos, the wolves of Loyola, right? They were in the hands of these well-prepared murder doctors who were prepared to take the $50,000 payout for a COVID body and get, hundreds of millions of dollars pouring into their medical establishment and kill a bunch of unsuspecting morons and terrified fools who are CNN watchers and terrified for their lives. It reminds me of a proverb of Christ. Those who wish to save their own lives will lose them, and those who would risk their life for Christ's sake would ultimately save their own lives. And so, with those kind of ideas in mind, it makes you wonder how people could be so really gullible to just go along with the TV doctors as they kind of, they use the deeply branded brainwash of Fauci going back to the HIV days, Remember Brian White, like, can we touch him or can we not touch him? Is it okay to touch Brian White? He has HIV and it wasn't his fault. And just the entire mechanism of the military, industrial, media, big pharma establishment, basically just kind of training our minds and branding generations and generations of people with this ideology. And all you have to do is look at the World Health Organization logo with the weird, the staff of Caduceus, right? Hermes staff. There was always different cults to the gods, and of course, the gods come down on the mountain, right, of Olympus, or in the Roman tradition, it was Mount Hermon, right? Was the legendary mountain of the gods, right there near Israel, right? We went through that a little bit in some other shows. But there, supposedly, where ultimately the giants were born, right? The Nephilim goes into crazy Book of Enoch, crazy occult stuff that people don't know a lot about. But there, of course, were the Greek legends of the gods from the mountains. And their father god was trying to destroy the gods as they went around and had dalliances and slept with the women and had children who were titans, right? That's the legends, the mythology of the Greek lore there. And it kind of jives up in the Luciferian tradition because it speaks of the gods who are from heaven, the fallen angels who come down to earth to manipulate in the affairs of man and to, have dalliances with women, so on and so forth. These are ancient, esoteric and kind of antediluvian mystical concepts that go back a long ways. But, to make a summation of the point, is that the staff of Hermes was the messenger god who traveled back and forth between the gods. He carried a special staff. And of course, over the course of time, the advent of the Medici art of healing or medicine, that's where you get the word medicine from, is from the word Medici, from the Medici family. They named a lot of things after themselves. They were kind of like a proto Rothschild family, right? Everybody knows the Rothschild family. Ooh. But of course, the Medici they probably still exist, and they're great holdings, and they're, expansive financial wealth. But of course, you don't hear about them. It's just the little clerk boys, the little do boys, the front boys that are up front there that everyone talks about, the little banker boys. But the high table, like they like to say in John Wick, of course, that's out of sight, and it's out of view. So all these things, as far as when you ride around and you see an ambulance, you see the blue markings. You see the blue markings, and you see the little staff with the serpent around it, and the staff of Caduceus, or the messenger of the gods of Hermes. Of course, Mount Hermon is named after Hermes. And of course, it's a legendary place where the fallen angels ultimately came down to Earth. And people like to think that that's UFOs. They're constantly turning on this propaganda as people kind of hysterically lose control of their country, and the debt goes into $1 trillion billion that no one can pay back. And your grandchild, you can just see the dial like rolling. Brrr, hold your little grandbaby in your arms. And someday that grandbaby is going to be on they just keep on like writing these checks in the name of your children that you have to pay back. And it's really not the process of paying back that they want. They want to put you into debt so that you have that debt obligation, and they can go after the resources the nation has to offer, and China can leverage that debt. It's tied to the American citizen. And when they're holding all that debt currency, they're holding our debt, and they can buy ourselves back from us. All right, that's when they go into the federal window, and the Federal Reserve just buys its own bonds. So now the Chinese realize they can just come in and they can just buy us from us, and then you just sign here. And now they have you, right? Because everyone has a price. That's the motto in America. That's the theme. Everyone will bend over and spread it for some number, right? Well, if I would do some obscene, disgusting act for this amount. Because it's all about money, right? Well, I mean, as fast as the money is depreciating, somebody might roll up to your front door with a wheelbarrow full of cash. I mean, it's just turning into ash, man. Literally, it's like biblical. So as we go on with our show, we feel the resonance of this audience. You are the creme de la creme. I mean, let's be real. You're the hard of the hard. You're not going to put a single iota of your country at risk to these pedo Biden pigs. And you've realized how far down these really ingenious strategists in Washington, D.C., as far as bringing the American people into this place of belligerent and assailant, and military terrorist on a battlefield in your own country, right? Instead of a citizen that has rights, as the Homeland Security begins to target you as a militant and angry terrorist, homegrown terrorist cell. It's your family. You're going to play Monopoly. You're a homegrown terrorist cell because you're hoping that people will love their baby and not tear it apart and suck the brains out with a vacuum and then sell the body parts to China, right? So I mean, it's absurd now. If you were with Kirk Cameron and you want to read about the little baby cult that takes Jesus, isn't that a good story? Who's going to do that? That's me, right? I don't have time. But that would be the best. It would be the best kid story. The little colt, the baby colt who gets picked to carry Jesus into the city, right? And everyone's holding the palms. And then look at the little colt, and he's looking up. And that would be the greatest story. What's his name? What's his story? What's the story with the colt, right? That would be the best kid story. I want to hear about that story with Kirk Cameron in the library. And I don't want to see any perverted Sodom and Gomorrah-like disgusting sex, disgusting transsexual pervert show in front of any of these kids. It makes me angry. Like the guy who they had to physically carry and throw out of the building so they could go molest the kids in the church up in Canada. All right, they threw him out. They threw the pastor out the door. It's crazy. It's crazy what we're going through. So we're just up against this it's like a force field of spiritual derision and insanity. And ultimately, I think that gunpowder is a thing that was invented that fundamentally protects our rights and liberties. And we got to remember that, man. Just got to remember that. And so here we have these people planning to destroy our food. You hear it with Bill Gates of hell talking about the process of getting into education, and this is back in 2008, and into our nutrition. So you guys have to have healthy food. You can be killed in a week with imagine what happens when there's a hurricane or a storm, when all the highways and roads are shut down for weeks, and if you're not ready at any time, and then if you're separated from the place where you're ready at, and you can't be there because you have to be over here, you need to have readiness over here. You need to be ready here, you need to be ready there, you need to be ready everywhere. You make sure your family members around you, make sure they're ready after you're situated. All right, it's a reason to get up with your family members you haven't talked to in a while. It's time to have some generators, have some extra stockpiles of fuel. You're buying gold and silver, you're buying ammunition, you're trading and buying weapons amongst yourselves, which is your constitutional right. And they're targeting all of us as extremists right now just because we want to have our constitution. They want to go steamroll that. They want to steamroll us, and they want to turn America into another part, of the World Economic Forum, Agenda 2030, out of the United Nations there. So we have to be diligent here and work carefully to enter into the record the most meaningful and fascinating aspects of this whole suppressed history of the COVID-19 conspiracy, right? So we have the Desert Review. Gates, Fauci, and Daszak charged with genocide in court filings. December 2022. Justice R. Hope, MD. In a stunning 46-page legal filing to the International Criminal Court on December 6, an intrepid attorney and 7 applicants accused Anthony Fauci, Peter Daszak, Melinda Gates, Bill Gates III, and 12 others of numerous violations of the Nuremberg Code. These included various crimes against humanity and war crimes as defined by the Rome Statute, Articles 6, 7, 8, 15, 21, and 53. Besides the 4 kingpins, 12 others were named, including the CEOs of the leading vaccine corporations and health leaders held accountable for the United Kingdom. Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer. Stephen Bancel, CEO of Moderna. Pascal Soriot, CEO of AstraZeneca. Alex Gorsky, CEO of Johnson & Johnson. Tedros Ghebreyesus, General Director of the World Health Organization. Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister. Christopher Whitty, UK Chief Medical Advisor. Matthew Hancock, former UK Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. Sajid Javid, current UK Secretary of State in Health and Social Care. June Rain, UK Chief Executive of Medicines and Healthcare Products. Dr. Rajiv Shah, President of Rockefeller Foundation. And Klaus Schwab, President of the World Economic Forum. So as we go on with the article a little bit more, Dr. Rajiv Shah, having worked for the Gates Foundation since 2001, was named a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, in quotes, in 2007. He now presides over the Rockefeller Foundation, a group funding ID 2020, along with the Gates Foundation. Klaus Schwab, a wickedly intelligent, perhaps diabolical German with double doctorates degrees in economics and engineering, is the founder of the World Economic Forum, a club for the wealthiest percentile of the world's corporate and political elite. He is a power broker who has groomed many presidents, prime ministers, and tech CEOs who now view him with reverence and unswerving loyalty. Schwab, an economist and technocrat, was befriended many nations, most significantly Chinese Xi Jinping, who delivered a key speech at Davos. He praised his vision of a new world order. On January 25th, 2021, Klaus Schwab vowed his support for Xi Jinping with his words, "Mr. President Xi Jinping, I believe this is the best time to reset our policies and to work jointly for a peaceful and prosperous world. We all welcome now His Excellency Xi Jinping, President of the Communist Regime of China," etc., etc. And so there you can see the video with Xi Jinping, the communist dictator, coming to the World Economic Forum. Many consider Schwab the mastermind behind the current movement towards cryptocurrency, universal identification, and a one-world fascist government to run jointly in totalitarian fashion with China. Attorney Hannah Rose and 7 applicants brought the Nuremberg action on behalf of the victims of the world, the entire population of the United Kingdom. She filed the legal proceeding with the International Criminal Court located at The Hague. The Hague is notable for its longstanding helping its victims of redress of war crimes, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. Violations of the Nuremberg Code. I think it's important that we get that here in the record. And, of course, this is more suppressed news that we're putting forward for you to find in the algorithm, even though it's going to be barred and banned and redacted everywhere else in the world. We are going to make sure that you can find it available here.
Coup. And the idea is to create a whole new set of laws and ignore the existing human rights laws and other laws under the pretext of pandemic preparedness and the biosecurity agenda. The WHO is developing through all its nations, but with the WHO Directorate in the United States in charge, a pandemic treaty and amendments to the existing international health regulations that will remove the human rights protections currently embedded in the IHRs, will enforce surveillance, censorship, get rid of freedom of speech, require governments to censor and only push a single narrative. Also, we will be subject, if they can make this work, to vaccines developed in 100 days, which the organization CEPI is planning to do. And one of the people who founded CEPI was Jeremy Farrar, who is now the chief scientist at the WHO, to bring this forward. Other things that amendments do is to bind the states so they're no longer recommendations but enforceable edicts, provide a liability shield, get rid of intellectual property rights, move supplies from one country to another, enforce digital passports, and the Director General of WHO can demand that a pandemic or a potential pandemic exists. He can just declare it with no standards, and then countries around the world will have to obey. Also, the WHO will tell you what drugs you can and can't use in your nation once a pandemic is declared. Obviously, the budget will increase. One Health is another part of this. One Health is a concept that was created to enable the WHO, with these documents, to take over jurisdiction of everything in the world by saying that climate change, animals, plants, water systems, ecosystems are all central to health. Also embedded in this concept is a peculiar notion that humans are no longer of greater value than animals.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
So we're working really hard. We're over here getting it together for you, for the podcast here, to bring all this information together. And we got to point out that it's becoming clear as we go on here how hard it is to be a populist movement. It's here for the rights of the people when the agenda of the emerging global order, the international system of government that's kind of being born as a supranational body there to ultimately run our lives for us and absorb all of our sovereignty and independence, and to basically reverse the effects of the American Revolution for freedom of conscience and political liberty, seeing those effects utterly reversed by a system that's totally committed to depopulation. So, the populist movement of nations doesn't really go very well with a depopulation agenda. That's what's pretty clear to me. And you can see here, even with Kamala Harris, vice prostitute, right? The vice prostitute in the White House over there, she's ultimately even letting it slip, a little Freudian slip there, making comments up at the podium, and then, making it clear that in the background what they're talking about, and she lets it slip out in public, depopulation. That's what it's all about. And so you have this whole issue with a long-term fixation on the attempt to make government medicine cradle to grave, heavy on the grave, federal medical programs or whatever they're going to have here, death panels, right, that decide when you've had enough, when you've lived enough, when you've taken enough resources and polluted enough, and now we're just going to, we'll give you that final jab, and it'll be a death panel, right? That's what Clinton was all about. And you can see there's a total fixation on getting this pharmaceutical, military-industrial complex, biosecurity state in place, so that it's just another aspect of the technocracy. It's just another aspect of the technotronic control that these elites and globalists will exert over your life. It's making your life a total hell. Getting as many people spun out on the lies and the deception and the counter information, right? And so this process of controlling our lives, every aspect of our lives. Think about right now the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, right? And just think about how they've let an utterly morbid and gross explosion of medical illness and gender dysphoria, right, carefully cultivated. Instead of these association of psychiatrists and psychologists in the world and mental health workers, instead of them going out and doing their best to treat people with gender dysphoric, unhinged mental illness, right? Now, far from that, they're going to ultimately be propagating these mentally deranged individuals and getting it set all over the society. So you can see they've been busily working to get into the schools and get their hands on your kids so they can try to mutilate them, to try to get them to self-castrate, chemically castrate, to get into the young period of their lives when they're very impressionable. They're developing. It's developmental stages of childhood, right? And they're in there tinkering around for hours a day while you're at work, whispering in your kid's ear, right? And they jump up and pretend like it's bingo, and they raise their hand in the air and they, oh, I got one. I got a gender reassignment case over here. Little Billy finally said it, that he sometimes feels like he's Sally because he's 4. He's 6, right? He's 6. He said he feels like Sally. It's time for the castration, right? Let's get the surgeons out. Let's get up to Boston University and Boston College. Oh yeah, wait, isn't that a Jesuit medical training facility there? I think it is. Boston College, just happily doing their level best to provide as many castrations and breast removals from young people that they can before they can change their mind, right? Before they can get older and go through their awkward teen stage of being, a tomboy. You get the awkward stage, you're going through puberty, and all of a sudden, there's the adult world. There's the Jesuit militia ready to pounce on any little kid that walks in who got talked into playing with Barbies. Little Jimmy gets talked into playing with Barbies, and now they got to cut his prepubescent wiener off, right? That's what this is all about, guys. It's a total destruction of our minds, of our souls, of our bodies. And these parents standing there walking Jimmy into the buzzsaw, right? Walking him right into the plane propeller. Right? Come on, little Jimmy. Let's just finish up on this decision. This is a lifelong decision you made. You're 8 years old. You're old enough to decide if you want your own wiener chopped off, little Jimmy. Or Sally, sorry. So, it's an utterly disgusting, all-out, unrestricted warfare on the American people. And it's not just China, right? They learned that. They learned that from somebody else. They learned how unrestricted warfare works during the century of humiliation, right? When it was the British shipping elites and the skull and bones aristocrats here in America, right? Using their shipping lanes and their shipping vessels to make sure that China was utterly inundated with tons and tons and metric tons of opium so that the entire nation could be addicted and brought into absolute abject servitude and slavery. And when people are just passed out, laid out on the docks, you don't even have to, there's no struggle, right? There's no resistance. You don't have to hold them down when you rape them. They just lay there, doped up, the house of the rising sun, right? That's where you're never supposed to go. But of course, the entire nation of China was taken there, and all of their assets of silver and the other valuable commodities were stripped away, and they were given the worthless and addictive narcotic of opium to assuage their pain and suffering, right? And so it's just experience that China went through, and even though they were put into the hands of rabid and nihilistic and insane Marxists and communists, you can see that Marxism and communism wasn't a product of the Chinese culture, right? The Chinese culture would ultimately get these ideas of Karl Marx there in England and in Germany and in Europe and generally, and other ideas about communism and Leninism and so on. They would get all that in the turn of the century. And they wouldn't necessarily, that political dynamism and that political weaponry being used against China, right? What was established in 1949. All of a sudden, the great and wonderful Chinese culture, 1,000-year-old culture, developed all kinds of medicines and actually invented gunpowder, right? Thousands of years old. And it was finally totally muzzled and restrained and tied down in a straitjacket, in the political straitjacket of communism. So utterly and totally enslaved by Mao Zedong, right? Who was ultimately a stooge of MI6 and a student of Yale University. right? Yale in China education program, right? They found the right guy. The MI6 Skull and Bones Yale Confederacy, they found the right guy. And Mao, right? They got Mao Zedong. They got him up there. They did their Cultural Revolution. They destroyed half the population in China. They brought them low, and they bound them and muzzled them in terror and traumatic horror that we can't contemplate. I think they're about to get that going over here in America. I think they're setting us up with that January 6th debacle was really just a setup for a Tiananmen Square type situation, right? To Tiananmen Square, the populist movement helps to depopulate, right? Helps us to depopulate when we can Tiananmen Square the American people. And we just got to find the right guy to do it, right? Really kill a couple, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 Americans with some tanks, run them over, That's what they did in Tiananmen Square. That's how they made sure that people would remember that. As soon as they started to build the Statue of Liberty model, right? They started to hoist a large construct of the Statue of Liberty there in Tiananmen Square. I think that's when they decided that they had to roll the tanks out. It wasn't going to work. The people's right to redress their government was not going to be acceptable, right? They were not going to countenance that populism, right? So it's just all about depopulation. It's all about bringing the people to heel so they can learn their rightful place, right? They can learn their rightful place at the feet of the masters, begging and slobbering and for, whatever little crumbs that they might fall off the table of the masters, right? Just beggary, penury, forced government abortions, right? That's what we have in China. And that's what they want to bring here, guys. We don't need all these extra people breeding and reproducing like maggots, right? Got to get this under control. Got to exterminate. So that's what you're seeing with Bill Gates. Bill Gates used to be some kind of computer nerd, and he's linked up over here with World of Economic Forum villains. He's linked up over here with Schwab. They're doing their level best to make sure they can, they're going quickly. Their lives are burning quickly. Look at Schwab. He's almost in the box. He's old. Bill Gates is getting there. He's going in the box. They want to try to upload their consciousness to the mainframe and digitalize their spirit and their mind so they can live in a computer because they're so scared of dying. They're so terrified of passing through this place to the next place and what might happen that sheer unrestrained terror just is controlling all their actions and behaviors, right? They can't let themselves get old. They can't think about getting old. They can't think about dying. They can't cognize it. They literally can't let themselves think about it every day. Right, it's the only thing that's really happening. Look at fucking George Soros. The guy's he's probably dead right now. I mean, they probably got him on like Darth Vader on some kind of computers and hoses trying to keep him alive because he doesn't want to go. He wants to stay here with all his money. He wants to stay here with all his power and all his ability to ruin our lives. Like his plan to destroy America, it's going like gangbusters. Why would he want to let himself die now? Right? They all want to upload to the mainframe, escape death. That's the plan, right? Live on here, tormenting us forever. And you can see Bill Gates is now in the microbe soft business, right? He wants to have his own vaccine. People might volunteer to take it, right? And so we're at the end of this age. We're at the point of the people. And what you're hearing now is the final gasp of resistance, the final and desperate fight of the manhood in America to resist absolute tyranny. And we have to resist absolute tyranny because submitting to absolute tyranny is a sin. Okay, you're not to submit to abject, total serfdom and slavery, right? You're not to. You're to resist and fight. It's your duty. In your Bible, you're bound in duty for the eyes of God to do whatever it takes to resist evil and to overthrow tyranny. That's what you saw in America. That's what you saw during the American Revolution. It was much different than the French Revolution, much different. The French wanted to go back to some obscene and debaucherous age of lechery and whoredoms. But that wasn't what was happening in America. America had the Great Awakening, had the Protestant Reformation. It was in the throes of a revival and a reform towards the Lord and having their Bibles and their guns. And they resisted papal tyranny through King George III, that Jesuit and wicked agent, that wicked Jesuit king, King George III, just bringing back the power of the Pope and of the Jesuits to bring in the Inquisition, right? When the American Revolution had began in 1776, the Inquisition was still in full swing, guys. They still could march into your house, storm kick your door in, and take you away in the middle of the night without an explanation. No charges, no right to face your accusers, right? No day in court to hear all sides of the argument and make sure the person is guilty. None of that. No right to speak. No right to defend your home. No rights in the Inquisition. No rights under Roman religion. And so that's what King George represented. We had the Glorious Revolution. We had the Protestant Queen Elizabeth. We had some semblance of enlightenment and civilization and the light of the dawning of biblical truth there in England. But of course, with a new Jesuit king, George III, it would be a throwback to the Dark Ages. It would be a return to serfdom and the butchery and enslavement of the people in the name of the Pope, in the name of the Inquisition, in the name of Roman religion. Right? Stop! In the name of Roman religion. That's how it had been for 1,000 years, a couple thousand years. And so you can see now that we have to do everything in our power to resist, and to remember that we need to resist, to remember that it's our duty to our children, to our ancestors, and to the children who come after us. It's our duty to fight for independence and liberty, and to do everything we can to resist anyone who would encroach upon those rights, including the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security is there to just pass around all the wicked plans they have to ultimately attack the American people, because the American people are the enemy now, don't you know? The American people who want to have their flag. So American flag, that's a sign of white supremacy. And if somebody who wants to fly around the American flag, that's a sign of white homegrown terrorism and nationalism and Christian nationalism. Ooh, right? If you have that, boy, if you have Christian nationalism and homegrown, people who want political rights and liberty, well, you can't have that. Those people could be dangerous, right? That's it. You go look at the Homeland Security paperwork they're handing around to everyone. People who talk about the Constitution, people who talk about their rights. Those people are dangerous. Those people have to be flagged for serious terroristic political ideas, right? That's what they're saying up there. That's what they're getting ready to do. It's another Bartholomew Day massacre, right? It's just another betrayal of the people. And as much as that the government will ultimately, commit a democide, it's what it always does. Right? It's a democide. It's an ultimate destruction of the people. That's really what the French Revolution looked like. The Great Terror, right? It wasn't a liberty of the people. It was a destruction of the monarchy and a destruction of the people at the same time, right? So that was the Jesuits behind the scenes, working as what is quote-unquote Jacobins, right? We've already done episodes on that. We already showed how the headquarters of the Jacobins were old Jesuit colleges and Jesuit centers that had been in France a long time. They were used as the political headquarters for the Jacobins, and ultimately they would just destroy the people, as many as possible, and they would just ultimately destroy the king, right? Who allowed the Edict of Nantes, who allowed a return for religious liberty, right? That's what he did. He was bringing back a restoration of political liberty for the Huguenots. So the Huguenots could pray as they wanted and have their Bibles, and they didn't have to recognize the papal authority of Rome, right? That's what the Huguenots were doing. That's what the king was allowing. That's why we had to have a French Revolution, destroy the king and then destroy the people, and have this ridiculous and disgusting and bizarre, a republic. Is that what it looks like to you? A republic in France? It doesn't look like it to me. It just looks like a technocratic control system led by another Jesuit leader, Macron, right? Wasn't he at a Jesuit college, Macron? Emmanuel Macron went to the Jesuit university. That's where he married his wife, right? When he was 20 and she was 40. There was at the Jesuit university, there was a female, what was that, fraternization, right? There was a female professor at the university, at the Jesuit university there. And of course, Macron just, he can't get enough. And ever since then, he's been going up. He marries her, and now he's the leader of France, and now France is in flames. Notre Dame is in flames. The people are, they've let all these Muslims and these foreign, be Muslim in your own country. Don't bring your Muslim ideals over to a Christian country. That doesn't work, does it? What are you going to go there to try to spread Islam and behead? That's what it ultimately is leading up to. It's just you bring all these rapists and criminals into your country there to try to spread their religion by means of crime and murder. And that's the plan, guys. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. It's happening in Switzerland, in Germany, in France, in the UK. Everywhere you look, on all sides, you can see they're just strangers, foreigners, people who don't belong, people who don't fit, people who are from some other failed and sickening and depraved culture from somewhere far away, bringing all their customs and practices with them, and threatening the very civilization into which they came. So that's what we're going to get into today, guys. We're working hard to make sure that we have all this information here for you. You can see that Bill Gates and some of these other guys are under charges from the European courts, having been part of the signing of the treaty, of the Rome Treaty, the Rome Statutes, and all that. They that formed the European Union. Now they're signatories to the criminal courts there, the international criminal courts, the ICC, right? Of course, now the ICC is trying to bring Bill Gates and some of these other individuals up on charges. Nobody can hear about it, right? You can't hear it in the media, but we're going to show you here now. So really now we have to take a moment to turn our attention to a really fascinating and somewhat explosive interview that we were able to catch recently. And it's information nowadays. It's like, drinking water out of a fire hose. And so there's only so much information you can consume. And there's only so many hours in the day. So you have to kind of do your best to try to keep up and to try to put everything in a perspective in a very fast-moving, high-velocity environment. The narrative is moving quickly, and it's a constant, almost militaristic campaign to control our minds, to control what we're talking about, and control the headlines, and to be the ideologues behind what is the purpose and philosophy of advancing mankind and moving humanity forward on these terms, such as saving the environment and sustainable climate development and the United Nations and World Health Organization. All that, these are supposed to be the constructs of global governance that we're supposed to kowtow to and somehow submit to. But we ultimately, obviously, you can see here, we're going to refuse, and we're going to continue to expose this moronic, sadistic, and evil world conspiracy. So we carry on, and just as we had to take our time to present the European Parliament panel, Dr. Meryl Nass explaining why the World Health Organization's proposal and proposed pandemic treaty will enable the WHO to take over jurisdiction of everything in the world by saying that climate change, animals, plants, and water systems and ecosystems are all central to health, unquote. In addition to that, it will remove human rights protections, enforce censorship, and break down national sovereignty, produce universal digital passports, require governments to push a single official narrative, enable the World Health Organization to declare pandemics on a whim, and all that entails. Quote, we're undergoing a soft coup under the pretext of pandemic preparedness and the biosecurity agenda, unquote. And so, just as it was absolutely necessary for us to include that information from wideawakemedia.com, it's crucial that we, push this idea of a climate scam, a new scamdemic having to do with this pandemic treaty. And in order to further the point, we want to just kind of pivot and turn now to Alex Jones interviewing Dr. Peter McCullough, one of the most prestigious and most educated and the most lauded and preeminent doctors that we have in America, who apparently was fighting just to keep his medical license because of his rational and honest candor on issues to do with COVID-19 and all the manipulation and conspiracy surrounding that. But let's not listen to me discuss it. Let's turn and listen to the discussion ourselves.
And what you're saying is key. Remember the UN protocol put out by Fauci and the NIH, because we know they ran it. When you get to the hospital with a sore throat, having trouble breathing, just go home and wait till you're half dead, then come back, then we'll kill you with a ventilator. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, Alex, in my Substack, believe it or not, there was a study done in Asia. Even if you use the sprays and the gargles in the hospital, they even worked in the hospital. You know, in the U.S., the nurses didn't give the patients any sprays or gargles. They got railroaded on the ventilator. I want everybody to have a virucidal nasal spray, have Scope or Listerine, have an iodine bottle, and be ready. The first hour of getting sick, get on it. When you're sick, every 4 hours, doing the nasal sprays and gargles. You can do it twice a day for prevention. I don't travel without having a high-quality spray. And let me tell you, it makes a world of difference. It works against flu, the common cold, COVID, and probably the next thing coming our way.
Absolutely. What else do you see, just as a patriot, as a husband, as someone that's aware of what's going on in the world, looking at the Russia war, looking at Biden not knowing who he is, clearly declining at an accelerated rate, looking at the persecution of Trump, just separate from the medical tyranny, just as a citizen, what do you make of the world right now?
Well, there's a theme, and let me tell you what, Klaus Schwab put it out there in 2017 in his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. You know what the theme is? Transhumanism. Transhuman. That means transform the human body. The environment doesn't change. Klaus Schwab says in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the winner will take all. What does he mean, Alex? Is that me or you, or is that him? Does he win and take all? Transhumanism means the body changes. That's what Elon Musk wants to do with the Neuralink product. Clearly, getting genetic shots every 6 months is changing the body for the worse. And now we've got the gender crisis, where suddenly boys want to be girls and vice versa. Alex, the outcomes are horrific with transgender medicine.
It's now admitted that the most powerful billionaires on Earth and intelligence agencies, including MI6 and CIA, have been preparing the transhumanist cult through the transgender attack as their first salvo since the late 60s. Now it's completely out in the open, and major opposition's forming to it. How do you think this operation of these organizations is going?
They're pouring pornography into the schools, trying to indoctrinate the kids, get them confused. Do you know all the medical societies, the endocrine society, the pediatrics and OB-GYN societies, they all say a 10-year-old child who's confused about their gender should start hormone blockers and then get their genital surgery, get the breasts removed, penis opened up, testicles removed. Alex, this is a disaster, and the medical community is driving this. I'm telling you as a doctor, this is malpractice. No good doctor should do this. 19 states are trying to shut it down, including Texas. But then we have the courts in Arkansas that overturned the gender ban. This is absolutely an atrocity.
But that's the good news. But that's the good news is there are men and women of courage in the medical community. I would say the majority are now starting to speak out, and that's why it's so much. That's why the attack is stuck in the mud and is in so much trouble right now. So people need to have courage to speak out against this and realize this is a real takeover.
It's true. A couple things to recommend quickly. Great book out there. The leading child psychiatrist in the world is Miriam Grossman. Get her book, Lost in Trans Nation. Lost in Trans. It's a how-to guide for parents to protect this from happening to their kids. Alex, you got to feature it in your store. And then also a great organization of support I donate to them is called Do No Harm. It's led by former Dean at University of Pennsylvania, Stanley Goldfarb. Listen, Grossman, Goldfarb, and myself, leading doctors, as you say, we're not going to allow this atrocity to hit our kids. If kids are confused around the time of puberty, you know what the answer is, Alex? Go through puberty and it clears up.
Well, absolutely. But plus, children, you could get 10 kids in a room and say, let's all pretend we're a superhero. They're going to do it. If they tell the children, well, do you ever feel like you're more attracted to boys? Well, they don't mean sexually. They mean little boys want to play with little boys. Little girls want to play with little girls on average. And so then they go, oh, they put you in a database, as you know, and then they keep it secret from parents in many public schools, many private schools, and then put you into a cult. This is a political system using sexualization to permanently make a connection to your child. This is truly weaponized.
Right. Parents need to protect their kids right now. Remember, ages 0 to 10, a single image permanently imprints the mind. If that child goes to a drag queen festival, the human mind is forever changed. Same thing with getting exposed to pornography. Parents need to take control, Alex. Do you know what school system shut down the pornography in the school? You'd be amazed at this. Dearborn, Michigan. You know
Muslims.
why? You know who shut it down? The Muslims. That's a Muslim community. The Muslims said, get the pornography out of the schools.
So let's take a spin over to the wonderful United Kingdom, right? And we'll take a look at in London there, New Bedfordshire, I believe. We're going to speak with a representative there to the wonderful Parliament, the House of Commons, right? Dave Holland, New Bedfordshire, UK. So what are they saying about the World Economic Forum, right? We all wonder. And of course, they're very closely affiliated over there with living so close to Geneva and to Brussels and The Hague and having everything to do with what's happening in Europe. The British would be having a very strong opinion about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, and we would be interested to know what that is. Are they the good guys? Or what's really the truth here, Dave Holland?
I'm Dave Holland, Reform Party spokesman for Mid Bedfordshire. Let's stay connected. World leaders are being influenced and are working in lockstep with unelected big business, billionaires and lobby groups. The World Economic Forum want to achieve their Agenda 2030 goals: population reduction, digital IDs, digital currency, an end to flying and private transport, 15-minute cities, an end to eating meat, health passports, a global military, an end to national sovereignty, universal basic income, social credit scoring. In short, apparently, you will own nothing and you will be happy. There is an argument that managing the planet requires a global government. So why not assemble the G195 to include every elected national leader within a democratic framework? That is not what is happening at the World Economic Forum. The WEF are using George Orwell's 1984 as a how-to manual rather than a warning of a dystopian future to be avoided. Not one elected leader in the Western world has spoken out against what the WEF want to do to us. In the UK, the leaders of the Tories and Labour are both members of the WEF, as are many ministers and members of the opposition. If you vote for the established status quo, you are voting for continued WEF influence, for Agenda 2030, for a new dystopian future of total control. Reform are not members of the WEF and have no intention of becoming so. We are anti-WEF, anti being governed by unelected bodies. Our politicians are elected to represent us in Parliament, yet they also represent the WEF agenda, the big business agenda, the lobbyist agenda, the bankers agenda. We left the EU so our elected MPs were accountable to us. Following an unelected agenda is not what we have voted for. No man can serve two masters. The Great Reset is not for our benefit. It is to increase the power that unelected elites will hold over us.
So as we go and to close the show out today, we thank you for participating and coming to hear the wonderful and sublime intonations of the deep consciousness over here that we're working with. And we of course, we hope that you'll come and join the book club and support us, our awesome sponsors like Wendy'sLimited.com over there, Wendy's Boutique Limited. Got to keep women beautiful, right? Let women be women, right? So that's the whole premise of that ancient and profound wisdom of old, right? Just let women be women. So we have to support our sponsor, Wendy'sLimited.com, and we hope that you will join us again in the future and come become part of our larger fan base and supporters. If you have something you want to say, please come and just jump on. We'll let you come on here and voice your opinion. So please support us. We definitely, we thrive on your support. We need you to come in and support us every chance you get. You can hit us with Cash App. You can email us with some feedback of all kinds, positive and negative. We need the criticism. We need the candor to help us grow, right? Of course, that's everybody. So we just want to go forward, and we have Dave Rubin here. Dave Rubin is just always on the cutting edge of making sure that we're paying attention to the bouncing ball right here. Really focusing in on the World Economic Forum, and as we've done a lot today to show you the conspiracy, the conspiration, and the constant artful design of cunning, what have you, that these megalomaniacal globalists, have in the works here. And so as we go out, let's just take a little moment to listen to Dave Rubin as he's kind of keeping us up to date here.
And the plan is in full sight, and it has been in full sight for quite some time. We have not shown you a video of World Economic Forum Grand Emperor Palpatine, Klaus Schwab, in quite some time. But here he is in July of 2020 saying that the next crisis will be climate change. How he knows, I have no idea.
We know now that the next crisis is already waiting for us around the corner, and it is the climate crisis.
Convenient, the next crisis is around the corner, and I happen to be somebody making a lot of money with a bunch of people who are also in their private jets cashing in on this bullshit while you peons will eat your sludge. Oh, I can't believe it. Bill Gates, who's also another one of these weirdo lizard people, here he is in 2008 with Klaus Schwab, and they're into population reduction, which kind of makes you think that it's weird that they had everybody injected with this experimental not vaccine, doesn't it? Here they are. Enjoy, or don't. I don't know.
What would you like to see as your legacy in 10, 15 years?
I set very ambitious goals because I'm quite optimistic. If you look at, say, the 20 diseases that our global health program goes after, I'd hope that within 15 years, over half of those, we could have had a very dramatic impact. Some of them will prove to be harder than others. For example, AIDS, we will have made an improvement, but not the dramatic improvement probably in that time frame. Malaria, perhaps, and a number of the other ones, we have things in the pipeline. So, huge change in the mortality rates in developing countries, which then has this effect of reducing population growth. That's this big benefit that then makes everything like education and nutrition a lot easier.
You see how twisted these people are? You see what gets him off right there at the end? Oh, we'll increase mortality rate. There will then be less people so that we can have the more educated. And these are anti-human weirdos. That's what they are. They are anti-human. They want less people. I want more people. And I'm not that worried about the Earth. And I think regardless, even if it was a problem for Mother Earth, if you want to have more kids and you want to expand your family and your community, go for it. Don't worry about Bill Gates. Also, the idea that Bill Gates is going to stop viruses is insane. What put Bill Gates on the map? He created Windows. Remember the Windows operating system? I always talk about it. You had Paint. What else did you have on there again? You had Paint. That was the only one I used. You had Minesweeper. I don't know what the hell that is. You had, give me one more. It's before you guys. You don't even know. We had, well, again, the Paint was very exciting on there. But that thing was a virus magnet. The whole reason that everyone moved over to Apple over time was because Microsoft, which is his company, right? Microsoft Windows, all of them, Windows 95, Windows Omega, blah, blah, they all got infected with viruses. And now this guy's trying to infect us with other viruses.